In this episode of In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics, we are going to visit with Brian Callahan, offensive coordinator with the Cincinnati Bengals. Brian Callahan has been around the game his entire life. His dad, Bill, currently offensive line coach with the Cleveland Browns, one of the best offensive line coaches in the entire National Football League. He's head coach at Nebraska, head coach with the Raiders as well. Some football credentials right there. Brian Callahan is going to talk about some of the young and rising stars the Cincinnati Bengals have on the offensive side of the football, what they've done in OTAs and the minicamp and getting ready for the regular season. Brian Callahan talks football. When the Callahan family talks football, it's serious stuff. You'll like it. Hey, man, good to hear from you again, my man. And a lot of people have asked about Hakeem Adeniji, and it's really a tragedy. It's sad. It's 2 years in a row. The team has lost players to pectoral injuries lifting weights. And this one was off-site. Hakeem's just trying to work out, get better, get bigger, get stronger, and tears a pectoral and has to have surgery, and he's probably done for the year. He was a candidate for that left guard position. There's no question about it. Will they sign a veteran before training camp? That's an interesting question. There are some people out there, but it's economics. Some guys want a lot of money. Other guys have played in the league for a little bit, and it's like, I'm not going to play unless it's X amount. If it's not, I'm going to retire. So you have to sift through all that. Who is really a viable candidate? How much are they going to cost? And all the things that go along with it. Plus, you have to evaluate all the other players that you have, participating for you here during OTAs and minicamp. And as you harken upon training camp, you have guys already there that, might be able to still compete. It is sad, though. Adeniji, in my mind, with his feet, he's got some sweet feet, and his hand placement is good. He's got a nice punch. He was a candidate to be a factor at the left guard position. It's a painful injury. Welcome once again to our beautiful studios at First Star Logistics. You're in the trenches with Dave Lapham and also in the trenches with Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan. How you doing, Coach?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. It just finished your OTAs, organized team activities, and a truncated minicamp that ended up being 1 day, but a lot of good work done. Big time attendance. I'd say probably as good, if not the best in the league. And then on top of that, everybody was in the spirit of it. Everybody went to work pretty hard, Coach.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge credit to Zach and his relationship with our guys and him working with the leaders at every position and finding a compromise on what our work would look like for the spring and what they felt they were comfortable with. And then they all wanted to show up and work. I think what a testament to our team and the makeup of the players that we have in our locker room that, they want to be able to come in and work and get everything done in a short amount of time, but still get a bunch in. I thought we did.
So let's go back first to, I'm going to do a little, this is your life, Brian Callahan, in terms of your athleticism and your athletic ability. Let's take it back to your high school days. How many sports did you participate in high school?
I played baseball until I was a sophomore. I played football, obviously all through high school. I played ice hockey all the way through high school and into college. It's kind of my ice hockey was my first love. I still play when I can.
Do you really?
And let's see, those are the yeah.
What position?
I started playing when I was a little kid. I played everything: offense. I played wing, center, defense. I kind of played it all. It was fun. I love playing.
What position did you play in baseball?
Oh, I pitched, and then I played first base and second base.
A pitcher and a quarterback, obviously, in football. So hockey was your first love, though, huh?
Yeah, I started playing when I was about 4 or 5. I was in Wisconsin at the time. My dad was at the University of Wisconsin, and everybody played there. That's all we did because the winter lasted what felt like 12 months. So we played all year round, played on the ponds, played in the parks when they'd make rinks every winter. And we just played pretty much nonstop from probably late November and all the way until the ice melted, and then we played in our teams.
Yeah, that's interesting. When I grew up in the New England area, just a little bit northeast of Boston, and same thing, we had a big swamp by our house that froze in the wintertime. We played hockey from right after breakfast till, take a lunch break, come back, play till dinner. I mean, it was like all day long pickup hockey games. It was great.
Yeah, it's exactly what I did growing up. It was exactly the same. And I loved it, and I still play. I played on an adult league team with a bunch of the guys in Denver. We had a couple guys on staff, a couple of the equipment guys. We had a little adult league team, and I mean I played last year. Actually, was the last time I played.
All right, that's great. That's classic. So you go to UCLA, play quarterback. Talk about your experience at the collegiate level.
I was a walk-on at UCLA. I had some smaller schools that I could have went and played at, but I decided that one, I wanted to go to school there because it's a great school academically, and I knew that I probably wasn't going to be an NFL football player, so I felt like education was an important part. And so I went down there as a walk-on. That's not the easiest way to go into playing Division I football. So you take your lumps and you kind of earn your way from the bottom. And so by the time I was a junior, I ended up earning a scholarship. I ended up, kind of top 3 in the depth chart by the time I was a senior. And then I held for the PAT field goals. I was a hell of a holder, just so everybody knows. I tell Darren all the time, if we need one, I'll do it. But that's kind of how I ended up working my way through that.
So that's life lesson right there. I mean, and nothing is handed to you. You have to go out and earn it. And for you to earn that scholarship, what was it like when you found out that you had gotten a scholarship? You'd earned a scholarship to UCLA.
It was kind of it was in front of a team meeting, and the whole team went crazy, and it was a really, really cool moment for me. I walked on at UCLA knowing that I felt like I belonged there. I felt like I could compete there. I didn't ever know if I was ever going to play quarterback at UCLA, but I knew that I wanted to go the big school route and kind of prove it to myself that I could do that. That was the main goal I'd set out for myself was to walk on and earn a scholarship. And, it obviously took a lot of work and it was a grind to do, but very, very fortunate to have been able to earn one, given the opportunity. And then, for us to, as walk-ons, all my fellow walk-ons in the world, I mean, everybody knows how big of a moment that is when your name gets announced in front of your team, and your teammates are cheering for you, they're rooting for you all the way anyway. And so you get a chance to see that kind of dream come to fruition. It was really cool. I'll never forget that moment.
When did you think that coaching may be what your future was going to be? Was there an aha moment, or when did it just evolve over time? When did the coaching click for you?
I was a sophomore in college. A longtime coach, a guy named Steve Axman. I don't know if you know him at all. No. He brought me into his office, and it's probably when I probably knew that playing football wasn't going to be in my future when I'm a sophomore in college, and my quarterback coach says, you should think about coaching. It's usually not what you want to hear when you're 19. But right. That's when I first started thinking about it. I mean, I'd grown up around it, and I always knew it was something I'd be interested in. I didn't know if I wanted to do it or not. And so that was kind of when the seed got planted. And then by the time I was a senior, Carl Durrell, our head coach, had came to me at the end of that season and said, hey, if you want to be a graduate assistant, we'll have a spot open in the fall. And he goes, we'd love to have you. And I was like, Coach, I appreciate it. I think I might want to do that. One, because it pays for my grad school at UCLA, which is great. And I got 2 degrees from UCLA. And that part of it was very enticing. I didn't know if I was going to do coaching forever after that, but I figured I might as well try it out. And I kind of got bit by the bug, and the rest is history after that.
So your degrees, 2 degrees, what were the degrees in, and what might you be doing if you decided not to go into the coaching part of things?
a good question. I ended up with a degree in sociology, my undergrad, and then I ended up with a master's in education. And
Right.
the master's program that I graduated from at UCLA was, I think it's one of the top 2 or 3 in the country. And so I thought at one point I was going to go be a high school teacher, which I did for 2 years. And I was a high school teacher and a high school coach at Sarah High School in San Mateo, California. And I loved it. It was awesome. I would go back to that at some point in my life, I think. But I just wasn't ready to go all in on high school coaching at 23. I felt like I wanted more out of the coaching profession. But it was a blast for me to do. If I wasn't in football, the one route that I was considering going was into athletic administration, kind of doing the athletic director portion of college sports. That was one of the tracks I had looked at going into.
You mentioned you grew up around football. Your dad, Bill, in my estimation, is the best offensive line coach there is in the National Football League. And he was a head coach, a distinguished head coach as well, in the collegiate level and in the professional level, coached with the Raiders and Nebraska, at the collegiate level. Just an outstanding person as well as football coach. So obviously, did you and your dad, were there long talks, Thanksgiving dinner? It wasn't just turkey, it was sitting around talking football. Was it like that, or was it not?
It always finds its way back to football at some point, even when we try not to. We try to be mindful of everybody else around us doesn't want to hear the football talk. But I will say one of the cool things when I was in high school is, my dad in the summer times, especially when I was getting towards, I was probably getting ready for my first year. So I was probably 13 or 14, and he never pushed me to play, and he never would take me to go anywhere unless I wanted to go. And at one point I decided I wanted to play football, and I would come in every afternoon and I would say, "Dad, can we go throw?" And so he would go, "Yep." Anytime I asked him, he would go. And we would go every day to one of the local high schools nearby. And he taught me kind of everything I knew about playing quarterback. And so we would do that. And it was always on my terms. He never asked me to do it. And it was always on me to ask him. And I thought that was a good way to go about it, because I never felt like I was pushed into anything. But those times with my dad, I think about now with my own kids, they were really, really cool moments to be able to just, him and I are just throwing football around. He's teaching me everything he knows about football, and I'm trying to soak up as much as I can. And then I look back now, and it's pretty cool to have been able to gain all that knowledge from a guy that I think is one of the finest coaches in football.
Oh, he really is. And you talk about a humble guy, just an unbelievable guy, unbelievable person to be around. So what good offensive line coaching is supposed to look like, being around your father all these years. Frank Pollack has returned to the Cincinnati Bengals as offensive line coach. And are you happy with what you've seen so far working with Frank?
Yeah, I've known Frank for a long time. He was with my dad in Dallas
Right.
as his assistant. My dad actually coached Frank in college. That's how far back that they go together.
Yep.
He was at Northern Arizona with him as a crazy offensive line coach, and he's young too. He's like 36 or something, just wild, man. But Frank, I've known Frank. I've watched Frank from afar for a long time. I've never been able to work with him, and he's everything that I had expected him to be. He's detailed, passionate. He's a phenomenal teacher. He's got great knowledge of technique, great knowledge of the fundamentals of offensive line play. And I really think our guys are going to be much improved for it. I love watching his drill work. I love watching him work with those guys. I think he's one of the best in the league. And he's got 8 years of playing experience to go on top of it, so then he's got some pelts on the wall in that regard, and he commands respect from those guys in that room because of that. So he knows everything they're going through. He's seen it, and I think that's a big bonus to having that kind of experience. And he was on some great teams. To be able to express those things to those guys and what it took to get to that level, I think is invaluable.
You, like I said, you just finished with OTAs and the mini camp. And Joe Burrow, I think, probably surprised people outside of the building, I think, for sure, with how much he did. I think I felt like he would participate, but I wasn't sure that he would totally abandon the rehab fields and do everything that he did. I mean, I was kind of like, wow, this is pretty impressive. And obviously he's a competitive dude. There's no question about it. Joe Burrow in year two, year 1 to year 2 for just about every player, even the great ones like Joe Burrow, that's when some serious advancements can be made. Is Joe Burrow a different player? How different a player is Joe Burrow now that you've seen him this year as compared to last year?
I think he just has a much better understanding of what goes into getting ready to play in a game, as far as the preparation goes, and the amount of things that he has to be prepared for. I think now that he's seen the speed, he's seen the kind of rush that you face. It's a much different rush, obviously, in pro football than in college, even in the SEC, for as good as those guys are. I think he just has a much better feel of the timing that it takes to play quarterback at a high level. And I've seen his urgency pick way up. Not that he was not urgent before, but there's just a manner in which guys go about their work when they've had a taste of that action and seen what it's like. Their approach next year usually is a whole lot different because of the intensity and the urgency that's required to be great. And there's no question that Joe wants to be great and will be great. But I think that's probably the biggest element. His knowledge obviously is improved. His comfort in the offense is improved because it's just another year doing it, which always helps. But the biggest thing is, to me, is the urgency at which you got to get ready to play, and how quickly you got to transition from, the college world to the pro world. And he did it fast, but there was still learning curves that were involved. And he's still a young player and he's still learning. So, he kind of had some hard lessons this past year that were good for him. And I think at the end of the day, when he is, lining up to play the first snap of the 2021 season, he's going to have a wealth of experience behind him that's only going to help him play better. And I'm really excited to see it.
Would you be surprised if he doesn't line up for the first snap under center against the Minnesota Vikings in the regular season?
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if he didn't.
He's tracking.
You guys have all seen him out there. He looks pretty good.
He sure does. Yeah, he sure does. He is such a competitive guy, and he's such a hard worker. He talked about improving his core strength, his hips, and his overall body strength. And a lot of guys have worked real hard. You can see that guys came to the OTAs and minicamp in shape. I mean, a lot of guys have changed their bodies, and Joe seems overall so much stronger, and it's translated a little bit to some velocity increase in his football without sacrificing accuracy, which is huge. How pleased are you with that?
Very. He just like he does with everything. He's got a plan in place. He's got goals in mind, kind of at every stop of the way, short term and long term. And one of his this year was, he's always kind of tinkering with his footwork and his mechanics, as all these great ones kind of do. They're trying to find where can I get even just a percentage point better, and he's done that. He went out to California and saw the guys that he works with, and he watched his own tape and put a plan together at what he wanted to get better at physically, mechanically, and then mentally when he came back into the offense in the offseason. So I think part of the rehab process has allowed him to strengthen parts of his body that he maybe didn't know were deficient. And when I say deficient, we're talking about very, very minor, but again, can make a big difference. So, you start strengthening your hips and your balance and your core differently because of the injury. Now he's really put on, his weight is about the same, but he's so much stronger because of the strength that he's gotten back and where he's focused in his lower body. And that's contributed to an increase in velocity. It's been fun to watch him throw the ball.
How much tinkering have you guys done together, with the offense? How much, how much new has been added? How much is going to be evaluated now after watching it at OTAs and minicamp before you start training camp?
We got a pretty good idea of what our core is. You know, we finish at the end of the season every year. You go through a pretty extensive self scout, and you kind of, as you come out of at that point, you look at what was good, what was bad, why was it good or why was it bad? Is it something that we can improve? Is there something in the structure of the play that we can detail better to be more successful with it? And then is it ultimately, maybe it's just not a very good play for the type of players we have, and you get rid of it. And so I think we did a really good job of finding ways to improve the schemes that we were okay at, and then really kind of dial into the things that we were good at and make them great. And then some of the things that didn't fit us, we've sort of phased out. And you do that every year. That's not new.
Sure.
But we've definitely, found what our core is. We focused on that most of the spring. And then, again, the things that we thought could be better with some tweaks, we've tweaked, whether it's a technique, whether it's a way we run the routes. And then, I do a lot of studying from around the league too, and everybody runs similar things. And so you kind of look around the league, certain concepts that you're curious about. Why are we not as good as somebody else is? Well, after you watch 50 others of the same thing, you realize that, maybe a split by the receiver can be tweaked. Maybe a technique by the release can be better. Or maybe it's just the formation of the play can change. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into studying what's good and what's bad and what fits. And then, we'll kind of have to feel out what Jamar does good too, and try to put him in the best positions with the routes that he runs best. Because I do think that we've seen a little bit of them, and I think we have an idea, and then that changes. All of a sudden, now you're playing against NFL DBs at full speed. So as we get through training camp, get a clearer picture of how to feature him best.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's take a few guys, weapons and players that you have offensively, and get like your thumbnail overview of what they do best, what their strengths are, and that sort of thing. And let's talk about Jamar Chase. Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase in 2019 was a sight to behold. 1,760 yards, 20 touchdowns. I mean, it was just crazy stuff. What is it about Jamar Chase that you guys like so much?
At First Star Logistics, we're a very strict company that really puts the pressure on our employees. Breaks? What are those?
That's what I'm talking about, Icky. Get the body right, then the mind's right.
Gotta get that body right.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
Become a star with a chance to earn the highest commission percentages in the industry as a freight broker agent. Check out firststarlogistics.com.
Explosive, and he's really strong. He's got great hands, and his speed and play speed are legitimate. And he ran a 4.3 something at his pro day. He plays that fast, and he's not a real tall guy. Like when you walk up on him, you don't. He's only about 6 foot ish, but he's 207 to 210 pounds. He's strong. He's really, really strong. He's not built like a traditional X is built. T. Higgins really is kind of more your traditional outside receiver, but Jamar has a unique build to him, and he reminds me of there's got some Anquan Bolden. He's got a little bit of Pierre Garçon was built similar to him, but yeah, he's explosive with the ball. So he can get in and out of cuts. He can burst. When he catches the ball, he's got a mentality that he's trying to score. And I think that that's an important part of being a great receiver in the NFL is when you get the ball in your hands, you are trying to score every single time. And he's hard to bring down because of how strong he is. And even for a smaller guy, he can elevate. I can't remember what his number was at his pro day, but I think he was one of the 40s in his vertical jump. So he can go and get the ball. And because he's so strong, he's got great body control. He plays a whole lot bigger than his height. And so I'm really excited to see him attack people down the field. And then with the ball in his hands, he's a guy that can take a slant route, 70 yards with no problem, and no one's going to catch him.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned, and he plays that fast. That functional football speed is a big deal. It's guys run 4.35, 40, and then they get in a game and it just doesn't translate, particularly when it gets to the route running part of it where, I remember seeing guys that could really run. When they ran their route, they would choke it down to sink their hips. They'd almost stop to make a cut, whereas Steve Largent who ran like in the 4.60s would be fluid out of his cut and get separation and be more open than the guy that ran the 4.35. And when you have a guy that can do both, you got something really special, don't you?
Yeah, and that's why Jamar was deserving of the place that we picked him, because he can kind of do all those things well, and his play speed is legitimate, and it helps that you see him play against the top corners every year in the SEC, and he does things that you're asking an NFL receiver to do. So that part of the evaluation for us, we knew that that's what we were getting, because he went up against probably 6 or 7 first-round picks, and then a handful of other guys that are playing in the NFL. So, not those guys have arrived by any stretch on the other side of the ball, but it's a lot easier when they're playing against that kind of competition, against guys that can press and put their hands on them in physical corners, and he's still beating them all over the place. And they're guys that we see on Sundays. That definitely makes you feel better about the evaluation versus a guy that's playing against, Division II opponents. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but there's a considerable competition difference.
Yeah, I mean, I'm anxious to watch him. The fun starts after the catch too. Yards after catch, yards after contact are kind of the same thing with him. The first guy doesn't bring him down for the reasons you're talking about. It's like he's a fullback out there after he catches the football with that type of speed. He's going to be real exciting to watch. You mentioned T. Higgins, the more traditional build at the outside receiver, but he really reshaped his body, didn't he? I mean, his body weight isn't dramatically different, but the composition looks to be dramatically different. And Joe Burrow was making reference to it as well. I asked him about T, and he said, "Boy, I threw a deep ball and I underthrew him." And I'm like, "T, where'd that burst come from?" And he said he's really done an unbelievable job of kind of not reinventing, but redoing his body a little bit.
There's no doubt. I was really impressed when he came back, what he looked like. Because I do think that, as a lot of young players, T probably didn't know exactly what he was getting himself into. And even though he played at Clemson, he came in probably even a little bit out of shape last year for what you expect a receiver to be. He, had a little hamstring tweak probably because of it. And then he kind of, as the camp went on, he got better and better. But, I think he has a whole different understanding as to what it takes to be a really good NFL receiver. And the physicality that these guys play with at this level, both, when you're trying to run through across the field, you got linebackers and safeties. And then when you're out one-on-one versus those corners, I think he has a much better feel for what it takes to be great. And he made the decision kind of at the end of the season that he was going to do the work required, and he showed up and he looked fantastic. And so I'm really, really excited to see what that's going to mean for T, because he was already had a good season. But you see so much more explosiveness from him. And part of that is he understands how to run routes now a whole lot better. He really is driving off the ball. Whether or not he's actually faster, it's hard for me to say, but it's the way that he practiced, the speed at which he practiced over the course of these OTAs was impressive. And he came back physically. He had leaned up, and you could tell he found some muscle mass. He was really strong. He looks good. He looks just like you want receivers to look.
A guy that's proven himself for a few years now, Tyler Boyd. I mean, what's not to like about Tyler Boyd? What about him? What impresses you most about him?
He has a great feel for running routes in the middle of the field. He's got a great feel for how to use leverage and technique. And, he's not the fastest, but he's a big slot. He's a good sized receiver working in the middle of the field. And, he can bang around with the best of them. He's a physical blocker. You got to go block when you're playing inside. You got to handle those nickels. And you got to make sure to get your hands on him so you can get some runs off in 11 personnel. But his savviness and his feel as an option route runner is as good as anybody I've been around. And him and Joe have a great rapport. Joe just kind of always knows where he's going to be. He always knows when he's going to break. That example last year from the Titans game, big third down late in the game, Joe kind of slides in the pocket and he throws the ball about as soft as you can throw it, because he knows exactly where Tyler's going to come out of the break. And the guy's got his hands all over him, and Tyler comes out and pushes off, returns back, and the ball just sticks to his shoulder pad because it was in the air well before that he even turned around. And so there's something unique about that. That's not normal to have that kind of feel for each other. And so, when you're looking for first downs, I mean, there's not many guys that have caught more of them over the last handful of years than Tyler. So you want to talk about dynamic playmaker, moving the chains on third downs. He's as good an interior slot player as you're going to find.
So let's talk about some of the guys up front. You signed Riley Reif as a veteran free agent, and Frank Pollack is impressed with Riley Reif. I'm sure Riley Reif is as well with Frank Pollack. What does Riley Reif bring to the table?
Riley, I was with Riley in Detroit, and so I knew all about the person and what kind of player he was. He left in free agency to go play for the Vikings after my first year there for quite a bit of money, and he was fantastic. He's everything you could want, and I mean, he's the leader of the room. He's the first on the field. He's the last one in the lead. I mean, he is offensive line alpha. You can see why he's played for 10 years at the level he's played at. And he's got great practice habits. He's got great work habits, and he's a good player. I really like Riley. I think he's as good a tackle as you can find. He can play both sides, and he's going to play at the right side for us. But I think that he's an probably undervalued signing for us, publicly. I'm really excited to have him. I think he helps change the dynamics of our offensive line room.
What about the other tackle, the tandem tackle, Jonah Williams? What's your assessment of Jonah Williams at this stage?
Jonah's done a great job so far. I thought when he played, he played well. He's a great athlete. He's very good in pass protection, and I think some of Frank's techniques and things for Jonah are somewhat new for him, and it's going to help him a ton. And that part I'm excited to see. I got all the confidence in the world in Jonah. I'm looking forward to seeing him play. Really, it's kind of going into his second year to some degree. It's his third year in the NFL, but second year playing. So I'm hoping to see a jump from him too. After he faced off against some pretty good rushers this year as well. So those kind of things, when you see those things, they change you to some degree. Your approach is just different once you know what you got to go up against. And I've been very pleased with Jonah and his spring so far. I think that his work in the offseason, he put a ton of work in too. He went out there with Joe Staley, and he's been doing everything he can to be the type of tackle we think and expect him to be.
Right. He's serious about his craft. There's no question about that. Let's talk about Jackson Carman being added to the mix up front. And let's start with, I guess, Bengal Nation was probably split decision between Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase, and you can make arguments both ways and probably won't know until a couple of years into 2 or 3 years into the career or whatever. But what I've seen from Jamar Chase, like you described, I mean, he's a special athlete, no question about that. And then you feel like, you got that particular position addressed with Jackson Carman in the second round, and was able to trade down. And of course, a lot of critics are like, "Oh, they passed up, XYZ player in order to get Jackson Carman." What is your assessment of Jackson Carman, and is he what you expected when you picked him in the second round?
So far, yeah, it's hard to evaluate guys with no pads on, and that'll be coming here sooner than later. But everything I've seen from him so far, he's what we thought he would be. He's big, he's tough, he's physical. He's a really good athlete. He was a left tackle in college, and he's going to play guard. I'm excited to see what he looks like in pads. That first time you put your pads on the NFL versus NFL players, is always a shock. I don't care how good you are, especially those guys in the trenches. Those are some big dudes inside there, as you know, Lap. They don't. Yeah. They don't take it easy on you either. So I think that's going to be good. It's going to be good for him to get a taste of that. And I think back to last year, how much better a guy like Hakeem Adeniji would have been had he had even just this limited offseason program. I think it's huge for Jackson to have come in here, be exposed to Frank, learn the techniques and fundamentals, learn the system, hear it beat, do it on the grass, and then now we can get to training camp and kind of hit the ground running. The learning curve has well been started, and we should be able to get going right away. So I'm high on Jackson. He's exhibited all the things that we liked about him so far. and it's going to be fun to watch him when the pads go on. Really kind of grow into playing the guard position for us. So really, I'm excited about him. I think it's going to be the pads kind of suit him. He's a physical, nasty dude, and I'm excited to see that part of that come out when we get to training camp and in the preseason.
You mentioned the name Adeniji. That's so sad, the injury to his pectoral, that could cost him the season, obviously. There's a guy that, I thought was going to be right in the mix for maybe even a starter at the left guard position potentially. Do you, at this point, is there evaluation going on as to do we go out and try to get a veteran lineman in his stead, or where's the organization right now in that process?
We're always looking. I think with Akeem being out for probably most of the season at this point, we're short numbers as it is, so we'll have to try to get somebody in here at least for training camp. I don't know what that means as far as who's available and all that stuff. That's for Duke and his guys to handle. But just numbers wise, we'll have to probably at least bring somebody in just for practice purposes. We'll be short because Trey is obviously coming off his ACL, so he's not a full participant yet. We'll see how that goes when we get to camp. But now we're down some numbers, so I'm sure we'll find a way to bring a guy or two in to help us at least. For sure for practice purposes. And then if there's other guys out there that Duke and his staffs think can help us, then I'm sure they'll go down that road. But disappointed by Akeem. I was really excited about him and where he could have fit in for us. He had a really good offseason up to that point. And so it's disappointing. It always is when you lose a guy that you got a lot of hope and you count on. So,
right.
But that's the way it goes.
It's life in the National Football League. There's no question about it. I guess, Coach, final question on this part of it with the personnel. Chris Evans, Puka, any other receivers? Is there anybody that kind of struck your eye that you want to see a little bit more of once training camp starts based on what they did in OTAs and minicamp?
Receiver-wise, I think that room is pretty well established, with Auden Tate and Mike Thomas, guys that we've been around for a few years now, and Mike for a year. Those guys are good, solid players for us. Obviously, who wins our punt return job will factor into that as well.
Right.
Trent Taylor's done a nice job. Trenton Irwin's a guy that we've always liked, and so there's going to be some opportunities in those realms as returners and kind of backup receivers that'll be fun to watch. The running back room is really intriguing to me. That's going to be a fun camp battle. Chris Evans has been everything we thought he would be so far. He's got a great athletic profile. He catches the ball really well. He's got great natural hands. Travion, which we've had for, a few years now. It's time for Travion to step up, and with some preseason, it'll be fun to get him in there and let him carry the ball a little bit more. He's done well when we've asked him to in relief duty. And then Jacques Patrick is a guy that no one's seen yet that hasn't had a chance to play in the preseason for us. So these preseason games are really big for those running backs. I'm excited to watch them. I think they're really three kind of good young players that will find their way. There'll be a big battle there. That'll be one of the big battles on offense is at the back of that running back room, behind Joe and Samaje.
Yeah, and obviously save Joe for last. Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon had his best year with Frank Pollack. He really believes in Frank's system, really likes the way Frank works with his offensive line and the run schemes, and he had a really strong season running the football that year. Looks like he's 1,000% back. And what are you expecting out of Joe Mixon this season?
I expect a lot of Joe Mixon. He's going to be he's a bell cow back. He's a guy that is always going to be able to carry the ball as many times as you want to give it to him, and he only gets better as he carries it more. I expect him to be a huge part of our offense. He's excellent in the pass game, in the screen game. There's a lot of ways we can find to get the ball to Joe that he's going to be productive. He's big. Defenses don't like tackling him. He's powerful. And I think the thing that I've been most pleased with is his attention to detail and the protection schemes this offseason. And so his technique, his eye progressions have all been much improved. And so I'm looking forward to seeing him put it all together. And, he's a guy that could very easily catch 50-plus balls and rush for 1,000-plus yards. I mean, he's that type of player. he's that type of back, and hopefully we get that kind of performance out of him. I think we will.
I think that most of Bengals Nation, at least the ones that pound on me, I think are pretty happy with what the Bengals have accumulated from a skill set standpoint. Headed by Joe Burrow. I mean, Joe Burrow's the real deal. I've never seen never seen a guy, man, with better people skills. I mean, that he just gets it. He gets it on every level, and then surrounded by the talent. Everybody's biggest question is, have done enough in the offensive line, Lapham? Is the offensive line good enough to get it done? And I guess that's probably the biggest question, isn't it?
It is. It is definitely the biggest question. I'm confident in the guys that we have, the guys that we've added. I think we got some good young talent. I think we got guys that are developing. I think having friends is a big part of that. And I do think that the guys that have played for us have played well. We just we've been hit so hard by injuries and line changes that it doesn't lend itself to consistency. And I think if we can find a way to get 5 guys playing together more consistently, that's going to help. And Quentin Spain played well for us when he was called upon. Xavier, when he's healthy last year, played well. That's part of it. And Mike Jordan's got to get better too, and he knows that. I'm optimistic personally about that group. We got some good young players with Jackson and Deontay. Fred Johnson's played decent when we've asked him to, and this is a big offseason for him. There's a lot expected from him, and expect him to make a big jump. So, I think it's fair. It's fair criticism from the outside world and fair questioning, because it really hasn't been a position of strength for our team in the 2 years I've been here, and probably a little bit before that. But we got really good young dynamic players. We got guys that love to work. We got guys that want to win and are hungry, and I think that goes a long way. And I think when you get a bunch of guys that are on the same page, you can have a lot of success. And I think that that's kind of the goal for training camp, is to get our guys in that mode and go out and compete and get better. And I hope we have a bunch of competition along the offensive line, and I hope it's a hard decision. I hope those guys make it hard on us to figure out who the starting 5 are. That means that one, we've got better, 2, we're deep, and 3, we got guys that we think can play.
Final question, Coach, and appreciate you spending all the time you spent with us, because I know that it's busy. And I guess one real other question before the final question, with the month and a half you have off here, you get to spend a little time with your family. Are you guys leaving town? You having fun? What are you doing with yourself, Coach?
Yeah, we're going out to Colorado. We got some friends out there. We're gonna meet up, spend a week probably up in the mountains, and then my in-laws have a lake house in Lake George, New York, and we've been going there every summer for the last 10 years. They've had it for 20 years now, and so that's kind of our happy place to just go up there and hang out by the lake. It's beautiful. If you've ever been up there, upstate New York, it's right on the Vermont-New York border. It's about as good as it gets. You just jump on a boat, float around, hang out with the family, and enjoy some time together before it gets crazy.
Good stuff. That sounds like a plan right there. And I guess the final question or comment is the AFC North. I mean, three playoff teams last year in the AFC North. I mean, here in the offseason, the experts, are saying, boy, some Super Bowl buzz talk for Baltimore, some Super Bowl buzz talk for Cleveland. Pittsburgh's Pittsburgh. Competing in the AFC North is a full-time effort for sure. How much does the division that you play in affect players that you select to compose the football team to compete in it?
Quite a bit, I think, because the path to the playoffs is through your division, and if you want to get into the playoffs, you got to win your division most of the time. And so, with that in mind, you got to match up with the teams that you play against. I think that there was years of when I was in Denver when everyone was trying to match up with us because what we had on offense, and they're trying to make sure they could keep up on defense. The AFC North is and always will be a big physical division. It's just what it's known for. I wouldn't want it any other way either. It's highly competitive. It's full of great coaches. You got great teams, you got great players, and that's what makes this league fun. Is you get to go compete against the best, and the way I look at it is, if you can win this division, you can play against anybody, because the types of defenses you play, the types of offensive schemes you play, it's unique in that regard. And there's Hall of Fame players played in this division, and there always has been, and that's part of what makes it fun. And I think whoever comes out of this division on top is going to be a contender for the whole thing. And it's a great way to measure yourself and where you're as a team. And if you can win in this division, you can beat anybody else out there. And ton of respect for all these teams in this division. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun season, I think, because everybody's optimistic, and we got these 4 good teams, I think, in our division. And we'll see what comes in the fall. But I can't wait. I love playing these. I love playing Baltimore and Pittsburgh and Cleveland. I think it's a blast.
Coach, great stuff as always, and certainly do appreciate your visiting us and imparting us with some serious football knowledge. Enjoy the family, safe travels, and look forward to seeing you at the end of July when camp opens up, sir.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on.